Welcome, everyone, to Meet the Winners for Canada-wide Science Fair 2021. I'm Rene Barlow, Executive Director of Youth Science Canada and the organizing institution for the Canada-wide Science Fair. This week's virtual Canada-wide Science Fair 2021 brought together 374 finalists with 337 projects from across Canada. And after nearly 1,100 online judging interviews by 300 judges, yesterday's award ceremony concluded by announcing the grand award winners. The top junior, intermediate, and senior projects in both discovery and innovation for 2021. And joining us here on the panel are all the grand award recipients. These 7 students have been honored as Canada's top young scientists, engineers, and innovators for 2021. We'll have the opportunity to speak with them about the path that brought them here, what inspires them, and of course, the outstanding STEM work that they've done. So our first Platinum Award winner for the Best Junior Discovery Project is from Peterborough, Ontario. Shreya Plassery's project is titled Unlocking the Legacy: Can Mycorrhizae and Spent Mushroom Substrate Activate Legacy Phosphorus? Congratulations, Shreya. Your project tested a couple of ways to enable plants to make use of phosphorus trapped in the soil. Give us a quick overview of the question you were trying to answer and what you found.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Shreya, and my project is about phosphorus. So phosphorus is a common ingredient in synthetic fertilizers, and it's essential for all living things. But however, over applications of phosphorus by farmers throughout the years have formed stable compounds in the soil, which are not easily accessible by plants, called legacy P. So one way to help plants access legacy P is by using P activators. I tested whether activators, arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, and spent mushroom substrate could help snappy plants access legacy P in phosphorus-deficient soils. So what I found is that arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi is an effective P activator that can be used in farmlands to help access legacy P. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, thanks. And our second Platinum Award winners for the Best Junior Innovation Project are from Fenwick, Ontario. Chloe and Sophie Filion developed the automated chicken coop. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
And what problems were you trying to solve, and what was your solution?
Hi, I'm Sophie.
And I'm Chloe.
The 2 main problems in a chicken coop are lighting and flock security.
For the door, we keep our chickens safe at night from nocturnal predators.
And with the sunlight, we can reduce stress on our birds and increase egg production. This helps our chickens in every sense.
The door opens at dawn and closes at dusk, which creates that they are safe from nocturnal animals.
Excellent, thanks. So the Platinum Award for the Best Senior Innovation Project went to Timothy Kai from Surrey, British Columbia. His project, titled An Investigation into Active Control for Accessible Orbital Flight, attempts to make steerable engines accessible to small-scale rockets. Congratulations. Now, what problem were you trying to solve, and what was your solution?
So there's this kind of rocket, so there's a kind of satellite that's called the SmallSat, and it's very new as a satellite standard, but it's becoming very popular very quickly. And so my project attempts to provide a affordable and accessible solution to SmallSat launching, because right now the big industry rockets that are available to governments and very, very rich individuals are unsuitable for this kind of work. So I designed a miniaturized, actively controlled rocket to prove a proof of concept that indeed small-scale orbital rockets can exist, and they don't have to be $100 million or the size of a skyscraper.
Excellent, thanks. Our next Platinum Award winner for the Best Senior Discovery Project is Alison Engo from Montreal, Quebec. Her project, titled Saved on the Fly, looked at whether antioxidants like acai work as well as advertised. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So what question were you trying to answer, and what did you find?
So really nicely said. So my project is all about antioxidants. We've been told that antioxidants are good for us and the more the better in our diets. And we've kind of followed that advice without a second thought. The question is though, should I make it a priority to eat antioxidant rich foods daily? Unfortunately, there isn't much experimental research addressing that question. So I wanted to fill in this information gap with an experiment using the fly as a human model. So in Saved on the Fly, my experiment, I looked at how stressed flies might benefit from a diet rich in antioxidants. And as you said, it was the antioxidant acai.
Perfect. Maybe we'll come back and find out a little bit more about what stresses flies a bit later. So. The Best Project Award for Discovery went to Calvin Karthik from Peterborough, Ontario, for a mighty mushroom and the power of poop, testing biogas production using spent mushroom substrate. There's a bit of a theme coming out of Peterborough here around using spent mushroom substrate. But Karthik or Calvin, tell us a little bit about your research and what you found.
Yeah, so my project is all about biogas. So what the question that I was trying to answer was, does spent mushroom substrate increase biogas yield when mixed with manures from ruminants or monogastrics? So what is spent mushroom substrate? So spent mushroom substrate is actually a waste material from mushroom cultivation. Tons and tons of this is being wasted. So what my project is accomplishing is taking these waste products and combining them with other waste products to produce fuel that in turn could actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which would reduce global warming. So what I've actually found out was that spent mushroom substrate does indeed increase biogas yield, and that the combination of cow dung plus sheep manure plus SMS produce the most biogas.
Excellent. And finally, the Best Project Award for Innovation went to Hardit Singh from Waterloo, Ontario, for Speculor, a comprehensive teleophthalmology platform for people-centered eye care. Congratulations. And what problem were you trying to solve, and what was your solution?
Yeah, so eye care currently, it's not integrated with our primary health care, and it's often inaccessible to patients who need it the most. And it's costly. And this ends up in 50% of people in Canada who do not get the appropriate screening, and 90% in marginalized areas not getting appropriate screening. So this is a problem I wanted to solve, and over 240 million people are blind today unnecessarily, and they could have been treated if they just had been diagnosed at the right time. So I made a teleophthalmology platform that integrates low-cost hardware to image the retina, and then uses AI algorithms to classify these images for disease so that the care can be brought to the patient.
Thanks very much. And there was a bit of an inspirational story behind your project about a friend related to retinal detachment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, my friend had a retinal detachment, which basically your retina starts to peel off your eye, and it went undiagnosed even after seeing 3 different eye specialists, and he nearly went blind because of that misdiagnosis. And then he had a really painful recovery. So that really just got me interested that someone who is in a more privileged and resource-rich city like Waterloo didn't get the appropriate care. What would happen in marginalized communities? So that was the really big main inspiration for my project.
Great. And speaking of inspirations, let's look at that a little bit amongst the other projects. Allison, what was the inspiration for wanting to look at acai and trying to address the issues around antioxidants?
Really good question. So as I said before, they're really popular in public media, on social media. I'm sure you've seen the influencers having acai bowls or boosted smoothies, but the real inspiration came from, it was a part of that, but the other part of my inspiration came from a more family issue. So not an issue, but my grandmother's tradition. So when I was very young, my grandma made me drink goji berries, which is also a fruit that's really rich in antioxidants, saying that it would be good for me. And my mom, who was a big fan of Oprah and a big fan of Dr. Oz, she would watch Oprah every day as soon as we got home. She saw that acai would actually make make me healthier. And so, of course, I don't like the taste of acai. I don't like the taste of goji. After all these years, I grew to kind of question this statement. I did some research and I found that there wasn't much proof behind these claims. So really my goal in this was to see if it was all worth it, all these years of eating goji berries, of eating acai. So.
Excellent. Okay. So Calvin, you've been working on this problem for a couple of years. And take us back a little bit. What got you started on the whole issue of biogas? And, I mean, you got to be fairly inspired to be mixing cow dung, sheep dung, and whatever to try and solve a problem. Give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, so actually, my inspiration came from my grandparents in India. In India, they have a small backyard biogas plant, and they would put all their kitchen scraps in there to produce biogas. They would use it to heat a small, just a small oven in their, just in their kitchen. So then I came across the idea of global warming and how these greenhouse gas emissions are increasing the global temperature by quite a bit. So I did a bit of research on that, and I came across different methods such as spent mushroom substrate. So I got really interested in spent mushroom substrate. So I learned about its delignification properties and how the substrate is delignified by the mushroom's growth because of some enzymes in the mycelium. So I got into that, and I connected with my mentors, and yeah, I came across a bunch of studies, and then I finally created 2 phases of a great experiment in my project.
Indeed, there probably aren't too many grade 9 students out there who say I'm inspired by spent mushroom substrate, but that's great. Sophie and Chloe, you guys have had a chicken coop for, I think you said 8 years. That's kind of a long time to have a chicken coop. And so I'm curious what inspired you to automate it this year?
So for the sunlight, we were seeing how our chickens were roosting at 6 o'clock when the timer was supposed to go off at 9. And this was because they were scared that the light would turn off and they would be stuck in the dark as they have very poor night vision. So the sunlight lets our chickens live a less stressed life. And then this also gives them that time, which is 15 hours for them to properly produce eggs.
For the door, we saw that we'd have to wake up every morning at 6 a.m., which was kind of not the best thing. And you'd have to manually open the door. And then you'd, of course, go back to bed. And at night, if you forget to close it, there's like pretty much 100% chance that you lose a bird because they won't go back inside the coop. So we decided to automate the door as well.
This is kind of inspiration based on wanting to sleep in a little later and making sure you don't forget to close the door. Is that basically it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Okay. And okay, that's great. And Shreya, tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind your project, because you were also looking at spent mushroom substrate, but applying it more to getting at that bound phosphorus in the soils.
Yeah, for sure. So I read an article by National Geographic last year that explained how essential phosphorus is, but with our current practices of phosphorus use in our farmlands, there are billions of dollars of legacy P locked. So I wanted to see if there's legacy P locked in our Peterborough soils. So I discussed with professors and a teacher from my school, St. Catherine, Ms. McInnes, and they've helped me find new ways.
That's great. And you also, I think, sent your soils off to be tested to London. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I sent soil samples to the A&L labs to be tested.
Okay, so making good use of the external resources as well. I want to talk about sometimes when things go wrong. I mean, not everything goes perfectly with the STEM project, and perhaps we'll start out with Timothy, because I think the story of your project is you had a few sort of spectacular failures in your project. Tell us a little bit about those, and and what failure, what the importance of failure is in the development of a project, and specifically in the development of a rocket engine.
Yeah, so my projects, especially the test flights, tended to explode spectacularly after flight because lots of different problems. And so the great thing about failure is that it teaches you things. It teaches you so much. It teaches you about yourself, that I shouldn't be launching at night, and that I shouldn't be launching under pressure, and that there's that Murphy's Law is always there lurking behind you, because you can do all the tests that you like on the ground, but you have no idea how well you're going to do until you're in the air. And when you're in the air, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and you'll see what you need to fix for the next flight. And this is super, super important to the process that I use in my project, iterative design. And so every time you fail, you see what you need to improve, you improve it, you fly again, you fail again, you improve it again. And that just goes on and on.
So tell us a little bit about your favorite failure. What was the one that kind of got your attention the most?
Okay, so it was actually my first flight where the rocket was not turned on when it flew, and it nearly hit my little brother.
Ooh.
So my safety zone was not big enough. I was sleep deprived and stressed, and the rocket wasn't on. So it went in a full ballistic trajectory and it went straight for my little brother.
Oh, not good. Not good to be firing rockets at your little brother. No. So good. Okay. So Calvin, any stories about things that maybe went a little sideways or wrong with your project?
Yeah. So I could say the main one, like the most disappointing, I could say, was actually in phase 2. I took it was a whole day of just gluing and getting bottles, emptying them, cleaning them, filling them with manure. Yeah, so it was a full day of that. So I was going to sleep peacefully, So I set up all of my water displacement method bottles, and I went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, all of the water that was displaced didn't actually displace into the collection tank. It displaced all around the bottles. So then there was water everywhere. So I had to throw out all of the manures inside the bottles, re-clean them, clean out the countertops with the water in it. I had to get more manure, spent mushroom substrate. Yeah, a whole 14 hours of work I had to put back into that the next day. So it's really disappointing, but I learned a lot more because I had to actually use more methods of sealing the bottles and how accurate my measurements should have been. So yeah.
The power of poop.
Yeah.
So where was that? Where was all that work done? Where did all that water end up?
All of the water. So it just like the water that was displaced, it actually just ended up on the countertop. So it was because the pipes were not the pipes. The micro fuel lines weren't actually put in correctly. It was switched around. So the one that should have went to the slurry went to the collection tank. So that was a simple mistake right there. But yeah, so it all of the water got displaced onto the counter.
And is this in your basement, somewhere in your house?
Yeah, so this was in my master bedroom washroom. So yeah, my parents had to give up their washroom for a week and a half. So
okay, so there are sacrifices involved in doing STEM projects too, and thanks to the parents. Harditt, any sort of failures or issues that you had to deal with along the way that didn't quite go to plan?
Yeah, so when I was building my first prototype, I initially tested using a model eye, which is to replicate a real human eye. So all my tests were based off that, and I designed my device according to that. But then when it was actually tested in real life, there was just so many different design criteria I just did not consider that in real life that would have to be used in real life in comparison in the lab, like how ergonomic the device is and how easy it is to use and the lighting. So my device barely worked on the first iteration. So that failure taught me that I should be accounting for how it would be used in the real world. So I was able to take that and rebuild my second prototype so it can actually work in a clinical setting.
Yeah, so simulations are great. They're a really helpful tool, but nothing beats real life testing, right? Allison, working with Drosophila can be a bit of an adventure. I had the experience to do that when I was an undergrad student, and so I know that sometimes they get away, and sometimes they're fun to count. And give us a little insight into what it's like to work with fruit flies as a model organism.
Yeah, so I actually also kind of did some work in my bathroom when I first started when I was 13. Well, I was 12 when I first started. It was in my bathroom. So my sisters had to give up the bathroom. They weren't as happy about that. Actually, the walls started to crumble and we had to renovate the entire bathroom, which postponed the getting back into the bathroom. But I'd say one thing that's really special about mistakes is that you make one mistake and you waste months of work. And that happened to me. So when I was preparing, for example, the food for my flies, it's so important to have the right ratios of gel, to have it the right ratios of agar, for example, so that it's solid and the flies don't drown in the liquid. But the problem was that I took a little bit of a shortcut. After working with flies for so long, I got a little bit tired. And so the food medium didn't gel properly. All the flies kind of drowned in the semi-liquid medium. I lost generations of flies, which is a lot of work to breed because I made mistakes. But I want to say that I still persevered. I had to learn from my mistakes, get back up and start over. And it was tempting to just give up, but it's so important to pick yourself up and continue. And for me, really, the failures were opportunities to improve. So that's one funny story, but I'll for sure never do that again.
That's great. And how's the bathroom now?
The bathroom is better. There was a lot of mold after we had to keep the bathroom at 50% like humidity and 25 degrees, but it was renovated. We have new tiles. All is good now.
Okay. A side benefit of the STEM project. Okay, new bathroom. Okay, Shreya, any stories about issues or failures with your project?
Well, I would really say that failure is the stepping stone to success. Like I've competed in the science fair like the past few years, and I haven't won anything, but that didn't mean that I stopped working hard. And a few things for my project that were kind of a challenge was that at the start of my experiment, I was planning on testing woodland versus farmland soil. And like this was during the winter time. So I had to take the huge shovel, and I was so grateful that my dad and my brother was with me to help, but took the whole shovel to the forest and started digging through that snow. So that was kind of hard. But after we're like, no, change of plans. We're going to do 2 farmland soils because that would have more legacy feed due to repeated use of fertilizers. So that was a challenge with all those like change of plans, but it still turned out good.
So yeah, there are definitely challenges trying to do agricultural research in the middle of a Canadian winter. It's a little bit tough. And Sophie and Chloe, you guys were doing some agricultural innovation of your own. What were some of the problems and challenges you ran into that you had to solve?
For the door, we had to do some 3D printing, and it took us 10 tries to get our brackets correct. One of the problems were that we had to make a hole for our hex bolt. I did not understand what a hex bolt was, so I made it an hexagon, but it was an octagon. So who would name a hex bolt? That's an octagon, a hex bolt.
And then for the light, I've already explained this before, but for our microbit, it has a clock on it, but it's not able to reset after 24 hours. So the whole time we were creating our project, we were planning on using the microbit's clock. And then we figured out that we can reset it. So we had to get an external clock that worked perfectly fine afterwards.
Okay, so there are always technical issues. Doesn't matter whether you're working on a discovery project or an innovation project. There's always something that comes up. But interesting theme that comes through there. Almost every one of you said that you need to address the failures, get back up, start again. I think sometimes people think that doing a project is very straightforward, or doing science or engineering is very straightforward. That it's step by step by step, and you just kind of follow the steps, and you magically end up with a solution at the end. But it rarely looks like that. So thanks for sharing your stories with us about that. One of the questions that we get asked by teachers and students and so on is why do a STEM project? I mean, it's a lot of work, and it takes a fair bit of time. So give us a sense of what the project and doing the project, and maybe particularly this year, in the middle of a pandemic, what working on that project meant for you, and what you got out of it. So Sophie and Chloe, maybe we'll start with you guys.
So I think that one of the points is that the reward is really like mentally, knowing all of these cool things. Now I can say that I know that a chicken needs 15 hours of sunlight to properly produce an egg. So the reward and knowledge that you receive from working so hard on a subject can come in useful in the future.
The other thing is you get to compete while doing something that will actually help you or the society at the exact same time.
That's great. When I read your project, I loved the fact that you said, well, we used a microbit computer MOSFET driver using pulse width modulation to control LED intensity. That's not something that grade 7 and 8 students usually say. What were some of the other sort of technical things that you learned along the way?
Definitely how to code a microbit. That was a lot of tutorials.
A lot with learning the small details and making a circuit board was another key role. And just learning what the microbit was also capable was a very big task, because the microbit, it can do so much on such a large scale.
Excellent, thanks, Calvin. What advice would you have, for students who are thinking about doing a project? Why should they do a project?
Yeah, like how Sophie and Chloe said, it's all about the experience, especially going to Canada-wide science fairs. It's no good way to put this. It was insane, it was so fun, and all of the cool people that I met, and like-minded people, and yeah, I think that it was really great just going to Canada-wide Science Fair, and even like participating in the regional level. Like I got to meet new mentors from different universities, and it was overall just a great experience. So I think it's really good to start doing science fair, I think, at an early age, and getting to know how science fairs work. And yeah.
So Allison, you said you started this when you were 12. Obviously, this has meant something for you over quite a few years now. Why should students consider doing a project?
I think STEM projects, it's all about discovery, like the other 3 finalists said, but it's even more than that. You get to discover outside of school, outside of your curriculum, things that maybe your biology class wouldn't have never covered. I'm sure maybe Sophie and Chloe, you don't speak about chicken coops in school. It's a way to learn about something that you don't get to learn about in your classroom, and you get to focus on something that you're passionate about. For me, in my case, it was things that working on how we can get an advantage of from our diet choices. And so really, I think that STEM in general, STEM projects, is such a great way to channel this passion that you may have that you can't really write about in a paper that you submit to your class. It's such a way to communicate your ideas with all the other finalists, find other people who are also as passionate as you. So it's really a great experience. And if you are considering signing up for Science Fair, I would strongly encourage you to go through with that.
Well, thanks. That's a great message for any of the students who are watching out there. Hardik, reasonably certain nobody teaches teleophthalmology in high school. What advice would you have for students who are looking at pursuing, a passion through a project that addresses some kind of problem they're passionate about?
We are lucky as a generation as a whole. We have like over 4,000 plus years of information right at our fingertips. So my advice, and this information to geniuses and many other smart people, and my advice would be to work hard, work diligently to a problem that you're extremely passionate about. You have to have a passion for what you're working on, because that would be the only reason you would find, that would be the only reason for you to actually work on it. And maybe you could help contribute to this 4,000 plus years of knowledge. And everybody here at the science fair today, and yet during the fair, has actually contributed to this 4,000 plus years of knowledge. And it's amazing because we are building knowledge and understanding our world in many new ways. So be passionate and work hard.
That's great, Timothy. You're trying to be on sort of the leading edge of the small sat movement with with being able to control rocket engine. Why should students think that they can change the world? I mean, you guys are grade 7 to 12 students. Everybody tends to underestimate, I think, the potential that you folks have. Why is it important to realize that you can actually do something quite significant in whether it's a field of engineering or science?
Yeah, so one of the big things about doing a science fair is that you not only learn skills that you wouldn't have previously learned, like I learned CAD and circuit board design and all kinds of other things, but not only that, you also learn about yourself and the importance of time. We don't waste, but we just spend a lot of our time watching Netflix or YouTube or just doing things that aren't necessary. And I found that when I just dedicated like an hour or two of my time, a week or a day to building my project, you can accomplish so much. It's incredible. And it's one of my great regrets to not have started this earlier, because I've learned so much and it's been such a wonderful experience.
And Shreya, what advice would you have? Why should students consider doing a project?
I believe that if you have an idea, like even if it's a small one, research it and connect with those who can give you feedback and help you make that into a fantastic project. Like you are going to learn so many new things, and even like the things I talk about, I had no idea at the start of my experiment. So if you work hard and communicate well, then who knows what amazing things you'll achieve.
And so a couple of you have mentioned things that you've learned about yourself over the course of developing the project. Shreya, what are some things that maybe you learned about yourself through this process?
Well, definitely the work of the hard work. Like you're gonna spend so many hours dedicated to this project, and if you are passionate about this project, then it's going to be easy to like want to do that. And also, like how I think Timothy said, you gotta spend your time wisely. Like you may be spending a lot of times doing social media, but if you spend your time wisely on your science fair project, then you can do great things.
Well, Sophie and Chloe, what did you guys learn about maybe yourselves and maybe about each other and your strengths and weaknesses and skills and so on?
I think that I definitely learned how Chloe's really good at finding information that is really hard to find. So I think that was sort of a superpower in our team, was that I could just ask her to find something on a subject, say the microbit, and in 10 minutes she could find me everything about a microbit.
Probably about my sister. I probably learned that she's really fast at thinking, oh, we can do this, 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 and this. And we have to pick one of them. I'm like, what would be the best choice? And
That's
from-
great. Did you guys divide up the tasks? Like, is one of you the sort of software and the other one the hardware, or did you work on everything together, or how did that work?
So we both worked on both projects, but I mainly focused on the sunlight, and Chloe still helped me on the sunlight. And Chloe focused more on the door, and I still helped her with the door.
Okay. Now, is that because Chloe was often leaving the door open?
No, we just
No. Okay.
wanted to do things a little bit faster, and this was the way to divide up the tasks.
Perfect. Perfect. No, that's great. Okay. So, Timothy, what did you learn about yourself through this process?
So in this project, I learned that I myself have limits. I have physical limits and I have mental limits. And I'm a normal person, so I need to sleep, I need to eat, and I also need time to learn and time to develop my project. And through developing this, I found out that there is a really good substitute for like your limits, because people have some people have like lower limits than others, right? I need 10 hours a night. Some other people need 6. So what really makes up for that is time. So a lot of people are just used to cramming projects in like a day or two, but I found out that I could solve so many problems that I couldn't in like a day or two. I used weeks, I used months to solve problems. And turns out that when you have enough time, pretty much any obstacle can be overcome.
Excellent. And Calvin, what sort of things did you learn about yourself?
About myself. So it's not, this is kind of what I learned about myself, but also that I evolved into during the time of science fair. I learned my time managing skills. Like I have to manage schoolwork and science fair, and I learned how to do that by how I could actually do that. And I learned that perseverance is really everything in science fair. You need to persevere. Like any kind of errors that happen, you have to find and solve new ways to get the results that you need for this type of study. So I just think that I learned that I can do things if I put my mind to it. You know, like if I really think that I can do something, then I can.
And Hardit, what came out of the work that you did that you were able to learn about yourself?
I learned that I really enjoy getting extremely deep into a problem. I would often say like that I would work for an hour or two on the project and I'll do something else, like my schoolwork. But then I would often end up doing a lot more hours on it just because I was so interested and passionate about my project. So I learned that if I was passionate about something, I will put in all the time needed to actually make it happen. And I think that was pretty great.
And Allison, what about you? What did you learn about yourself?
Like Timothy and Calvin so eloquently said, I think I really just learned how to become a better scientist. And there's kind of 2 parts to that. There's the perseverance side, like Calvin said, I sometimes spent at the lab 13 hours a day, which is almost like a full-time job. During the summers when my friends were out enjoying their summers, I was at the lab. And also after school hours as well, sometimes I'd stay until 9 p.m. But on top of that, you also have to have a good plan. You need to know what you're going to do every day. You need to have a good protocol to test the right variables that you're trying to aim for. You really need to stay focused on the question at hand, and also need to learn from your mistakes. You know, you have to keep picking up and keep going. And good planning and good protocol really makes it easier to establish a good experiment and definitely develop a great project.
Excellent. So is it fun to do a project? You know, I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. You know, 13 hours in the lab. That's as you said, it's like a full-time job, and yet you're laughing and smiling about it. So what is it that appeals to you about doing that, and what makes working on the project fun?
I really can't describe to you why I worked there for 13 hours. It's just really the passion that drove me to keep on going, to keep sorting the mails from the female flies to keep testing out different combinations of food mediums. It's just really the process of discovery that's so fun, I'm so passionate about, and definitely something I'd want to do in my future.
Great. And Sophie and Chloe, it looks like you had a lot of fun, building and the additions to your chicken coop and doing all the programming and so on. Tell us a little about that.
Well, we've always been playing with electrical stuff ever since we were little. We'd make hats out of LED lights. Our music teacher would buy us electrical games. So I think that when we were doing this project, it was fun because we like to learn and we could implicate things that we already knew and combine what we were learning at the same time, which was something really fun to do, to connect the wires and see how our project is working. I think that the testing was really the most
I felt
fun.
like it was like a game that doesn't exist yet.
That's a great way to describe it. It's a game that doesn't exist yet. Okay, Calvin, what makes it fun?
What makes it fun? I think what actually drove me, like how Allison said, is like the passion for the subject. So yes, that's where I got my perseverance from, and how the drive. So what actually made it fun is just something like relief, kind of, when you see the results, like when you finally, after all the hard work, it just pays off when you see what actually happened. Like when I'm inputting data into graphs and I can see what my project actually is now, and how it evolved from a small project using balloons connected to a bottle to the rate of change every day in a water displacement tank, and p-values and everything. It's just a great process.
So Shreya, what's fun about your project, and what made it fun working on it this year?
I had so much fun during my project. I really liked working on something that's going to help our humanity and our next generations. And I've also learned so many new things. And I even remember every morning I would run to my basement and see if my flowers started to bloom, because I just love seeing the stages of a snappy plant. It's just really fascinating to me. But yeah, when they started to bloom, I got really happy about that, and just to see the results.
Great. And Hardit, what's fun about developing a new piece of software and hardware and the solution?
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. Like Allison said, like the entire discovery process of discovering new things and trying different things out. It was really fun to see your results. Like Calvin said, it was exciting when you got great results, and when you didn't get great results, you really wanted to push towards getting those amazing results. And just the entire building process of an innovation is a ton of fun. You start with a prototype that completely fails, you reiterate upon it, and then you develop something that actually does work. And just that whole process, this whole innovation or discovery process, is a ton of fun.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, Hardit. You're not the first person to kind of take a camera and apply it to looking at eye disease and that sort of thing. What is it about your project that makes it innovative?
Yeah, so the current low-cost screening methods, they use the smartphone camera, which is, the quality then depends on whatever smartphone the person has. And it depends on the processing algorithms that their smartphone has. Another problem is that there's a lot of specular reflections. So these images end up extremely with bright white spots over them. So it's really hard to diagnose them for disease. So my project for the hardware really reduced all those for about the same price, and made sure I get really high quality images so that I could go into my AI and be classified and get great results in that too.
So talk about your AI a little bit. You used a convolutional neural network, which is kind of a form of machine learning. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I trained a convolutional neural network using transfer learning. they kind of learn like our human brain with neurons, and it trains different weights in it. So that, and basically what it does is it tries to learn and classify these images to different labels. So I had a data set of diseased images and normal images, and I would classify them using this convolutional neural network. And I created a new technique for training it, which integrated supervised learning with reinforcement learning. So I would have labeled loops with a reinforcement training. So it's kind of like training a dog by having a bunch of other dogs do a trick in front of it, and then that dog learns all the intricacies of that trick. And I combine that with also rewarding the dog as it's training.
Okay, and so your work's actually been published in the Journal of the Optical Society of America. Tell us a little bit about that, because that was just recent, May 7th, I think.
Yeah, that was the biggest highlight of this project, I think. I actually applied to 2 other journals before that, and they just rejected me because my project wasn't novel enough for that journal. But it was just extremely fun. The entire review process, you would write a paper on your new algorithm. I wrote a paper on the new AI algorithm I developed, training method I developed. And then the reviewer would find a bunch of mistakes or find things that I could improve upon. And that made my project a whole lot better. So the entire process of writing the paper, getting some feedback from actual people working in the scientific field, that advice really made my project a whole lot better.
Well, congratulations, and that obviously helped to elevate your project to the level where you're winning a Best Project Award at the Canada-wide Science Fair. So congratulations. That's fantastic. So Calvin, your project, you've identified some what appears to be some promising things related to using spent mushroom substrate and dung and so on. What do you see as the future for this?
In the future, what I really want to do is expand this project, use more manures, more combinations, more everything. I want to expand this to a large-scale project. I want to get some promising results. But in the near future, I'm hoping to visit some biogas plants and see how the production and distribution of actual biogas in the real world. So I want to try that. I also want to introduce my report and my project to some local farmers and biogas plant owners, and I just want to introduce them to what I've discovered and how they could integrate it into the way that they produce biogas or how they farm.
I guess you have to be a little careful in social settings to say, I want to use more manures. That I don't know. That's probably an interesting conversation starter, but that's great. Thanks, Calvin. Allison, where do you want to go with this project, and what are your thoughts for the future?
Yeah, so my project, I found that antioxidants can protect flies in only specific situations, like against severe stress. However, on the flip side, it doesn't really protect in the long term. So obviously my project is on flies, which is not exactly equivalent to humans. But I hope that my experiment will encourage, further research into dietary antioxidants. For example, based on my study, we may consider short-term studies in humans who are also undergoing severe stresses such as infections. We all know the COVID, and it's just I think that really just looking into guiding future human studies, maybe I can be part of a team in that sense. I also want to look at maybe the more biochemical aspect of what's happening inside the fly, which is also really interesting to me. But those are some things I see in the near future.
That's great. What constitutes stress for a fly? I mean, I don't think fruit flies are particularly aware of COVID or anxiety or whatever. So what's a stress for a fly?
Yeah, so in my experiment, obviously I couldn't interview the flies, ask them how they're doing, if they feel stressed lately. But I had to choose stressors that were still appropriate for us humans so that we could kind of extrapolate that to us. So I chose 3 different stressors. One was hydrogen peroxide, 2% for 24 hours, and that constituted a little bit of an oxidative stress that is very similar to the oxidative damage that we encounter in infections and in, for example, treatments like chemotherapy that are very stressful to our body oxidatively. A second stress that I used was aging, and we all know what that is. We're all very familiar with that. So I aged my flies as a stressor. And the last stressor was a genetic modification. I genetically modified a fly so that it lacks a natural antioxidant protector. And so therefore I'd expect them to be stressed.
Okay. All right. So there are actually things that stress flies. Okay, and we could test them to parallel work with humans. That's great. Thanks. So Timothy, what about you? What about the future for your work and rockets and satellites and all that? Are you hoping to end up working for the Canadian Space Agency or NASA, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I dream of working for SpaceX. They're at the cutting edge. But for my project, I hope that in the future I can gain my L1 certification. So that is the first level of high power rocketry motors. And so you can get that from the Canadian Association of Rocketry. And that allows me to use like motors the size of my forearm. And it's like that can take you up to 1 kilometer and up. So the point of my project would be to test it higher and higher. And eventually my ultimate goal would be to try and do a space shot with active control. But that is far off in the future. You have to see it with the telescope.
Okay, excellent. So you're going to use bigger, more powerful motors and keep your little brother out of the way. So good. Okay, Shreya, what's up for you in terms of the future of your project?
So from this project, I realized that Brassica mycorrhizal fungi helps snappy plants access legacy P, but spent mushroom substrate did not perform well as expected. I'm thinking that the 10% concentration was too high. So I'm thinking in the future that I will do perhaps 1 to 2% of SMS and maybe try different strains of mycorrhizae and maybe non-leguminous plants and also different P activators like zeolite and biochar to see if there's comparable results. And also I could test if the organic soil versus conventional soil to see if comparable results are also achieved. And farmers could also limit the use of mineral phosphate use. Even for my project, I had one very low and one medium levels of available phosphorus, and they performed almost equally as well. So that means that most of the time the plants don't need that phosphorus applied. So farmers can limit the use of mineral phosphates.
So that could not only save farmers a fair bit of money in terms of use of fertilizers, but also be better for the environment, because phosphorus and phosphates are a pretty significant environmental issue, aren't they?
Yeah, so the phosphorus resource from rocks is finite, and often it contributes to farm runoff and causes eutrophication, harming our aquatic plants and animals. So farmers could use this economically viable activators for their crops.
Okay. And Sophie and Chloe, what's the future of the automated chicken coop? Are you going to go into business, and we're going to be able to buy these at the Home Depot and Lowe's and Rona in the future?
In the future for the automated door, we want to make it larger because in our project it says that we actually got turkeys, and when we designed the door, we made it so that it can only fit a chicken. So we have to make it larger for our turkeys to fit through and other animals.
We also want to switch out our microbit to an ESP32. This will minimize cost because microbit's $30 when an ESP is around $7. And we could attach wireless features.
Okay, That's excellent. So let's just do a quick go around in terms of what advice you would give to students who are starting a project and or their teacher said you have to do a project, and what advice would you give them in terms of making sure that their project is a success and that they actually enjoy working on it. So Sophie and Chloe, why don't you kick that off?
First off, do something that you would want to do and that you're passionate about so that you'll actually be interested in it.
You also you need to push forward and you need to persevere because there's something at the end of the road and you just have to look forward and work really hard and then you'll get there.
And don't just stop at the finish line or halfway through, just finish the project.
All right, that's great. And Shreya, what advice would you give?
Yeah, almost like Sophie and Chloe, you need to have a topic that you're truly passionate about because you're going to be spending so many months doing that project. If you're not passionate about it, it's going to be hard. So do something you're passionate about and make sure you work hard. So research, and if that means to kind of spend some nights, yeah, and you have to be able to time manage and research about it, and also try to connect with those who can help you. So email professors or teachers that can really help you make your project into something fantastic.
Timothy, what about you?
Yeah, so like Shreya said, outreach is very important. I contacted UBC Rocket because they're like the big university near me, and they've got lots of experience with rockets, and they taught me the basics. But another thing that's very important is you need to dive into the points where you're good at the subject that you chose. So I started with knowing nothing about actual building rockets, and then after a few weeks of research, after a few months, you get good at it. And when you're actually you have knowledge and you're good at it, you enjoy solving the problems that it brings up. My rocket has 7 subsystems, and each of them bring up new things each and every day that I have to work on. And it becomes something enjoyable because it's just problem solving after problem solving, and it's a really nice process.
Allison, what would you suggest for students working on a project?
I really completely agree with Sophie and what all of you guys said. It's so important to find a passion, something that you're passionate about. Ask a lot of questions, find out everything. It's so important to have that critical thinking. But also when you encounter failures, it's just part of the process, don't give up. I have a lot of friends who perhaps didn't win an award, but it's not about getting the gold medal or getting the silver medal. It's really about discovering, sharing your ideas. At the end of the day, it's not just a competition, it's a fair. It's a fair to communicate. And, it's really, don't be afraid to ask for advice. You can even ask advice from your judges, for example. It's just a conversation that you want to have with people. In the end, if you're passionate about something, then just go for it.
We're going to give our final word to our 2 Best Project Award winners. So Hardit, what advice would you have for students looking at doing a project?
Yeah, like everybody else said, you should have a passion in whatever project you choose to do because you're going to be working on it for a really long time. So you must be passionate about it. And you shouldn't be afraid of failure, as you can actually use it to leverage your project and make it a lot better. And I would suggest that you should unleash your inner childlike curiosity. As children, we're always so ready to explore and try out new things, even if they may not work out. And that inner childlike curiosity can really help you bring your project and improve it a lot.
That's excellent advice. Stay curious. And Calvin, what advice would you give?
I completely agree with all of the advice that each of these winners have said. But I think that the main idea is to never limit your knowledge. Don't look into something and then just stop there. You want to get as much information as you can about one topic. Go find information about topics related to that topic. You do not want to limit your knowledge at all. You want to learn every single aspect of what's going on in that project.
Well, thanks so much. And the advice very clearly is, stay curious, don't be afraid of failure, be persistent, pick something that you are passionate about, that you love doing, and I think all of that is fantastic advice for students looking to do STEM projects. Obviously, we've got 7 of Canada's top young scientists, innovators, engineers here with us. It's been a pleasure to share an hour with them and to hear the thoughts that you have on your projects and advice and some of the experiences and funny stories. And so thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Congratulations on your achievements and the awards. I hope that you have a great future, and I look forward to seeing you again at future events. And just before we go, I want to mention that our next session is the Area XO presentation. Some really exciting work in autonomous vehicles taking place in Ottawa. So I encourage you to stay on the line and watch that. And thanks again, and congratulations again to our Platinum and Best Project Award winners for Canada-wide Science Fair 2021.